Hey there gamer, welcome to D6 Damage. Today we're talking about enchantment. No, not weapon enchantment, that's a whole different topic. We're talking about the Enchantment Magic School, a personal favorite of mine. And why is that? Because when your enemies are gloating with their big overcompensatory magic weapons and the power to call fire and lightning to their hands, you know that with enchantment, they'll never get a chance to use them. First, let's look at the Enchantment School. There are two sub-schools, Charm and Compulsion. Charm is fairly small in terms of the spells that it covers. It only really gets Charm Person, Charm Monster, Charm Animal, and the mass versions of all three. Basically, this sub-school makes your victim, target, see you in the best possible light. Your mark automatically treats you as friendly, and you can give him instructions. This set of spells has a long duration of 1 hour per caster level for Charm Person and Charm Animal, and 1 day per caster level for Charm Monster. If you're going to be using this one, you want to use it under the right circumstances. If your target is being attacked by you or your allies, he receives a +5 bonus to his save against your spell. So surprise, discretion, and timing matter. Once you've cast, he gets 1 save, and if he fails, he's yours, and you can tell him what to do. But your mark will never follow suicidal instructions, although you might be able to talk him into doing something dangerous if you word it right. Now let's talk about the other, much more substantial sub-school of enchantment, Compulsion. This forces your target to do something. Some of the more interesting compulsion spells in no particular order are Calm Emotions. This is good for dispelling rage. Enthrall. This lets you keep a group from taking action. Feeble Mind. This drops your target's intelligence and charisma to 1. Hideous Laughter, which strikes your targets with paroxysms, I hope that's a word, of laughter. The ever awesome family of hold spells, which paralyzes your target. Insanity, if you're a fan of the Galloping Crazies. Mind Fog, which creates a cloud of paint fumes or something, because anything in it takes a -10 to wisdom checks and will saves. And Suggestion, which makes a character follow a set of instructions. But that list is just for starters. Now, any offensive enchantment spell, no matter the sub-school, has something in common. DC, that's dice check, or the roll that your mark needs to make to avoid the effects of your spell. I'm going to use Hold Person as an example. The DC is 10, plus the spell level, Hold is a 3rd level spell, and finally the modifier for whichever mental stat you have running the spell. So let's say I'm a sorcerer with a +5 charisma modifier. That means that the DC is 10, plus 3, plus 5. This adds up to 18. And with a new saving throw every round, that barbarian or fighter I have held is 1 good roll away from chopping me in half with a sword the size of a surfboard. So you'll need to find ways to increase that DC. The fact is, with enchantment, you'll need to invest if you want to make it really worthwhile. First off, I highly recommend Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus in enchantment. Both of these add +1 to the DC of your enchantment spell, so the DC is now up to 20. Next, you'll want to be boosting the mental ability that runs the spell, either organically by adding ability points into it as you level, or casting either Eagle's Splendor, Fox's Cunning, or Owl's Wisdom. These spells give that corresponding mental stat a +4 boost for 1 minute per caster level. So cast it before the fight and you're good to go. And that means that the DC is now up to 22. Now for a little background on Sorcerer Bloodlines. Each one has a thing called a Bloodline Arcana. The one for the Fey Bloodline adds +2 to the DC of all compulsion spells you cast. The Infernal Arcana does the same thing but for charm, but it's really not worth it because of the limited number of things it applies to. Anyway, the DC is now 24. Next, you'll want metamagic feats. Extend Spell, for example. Now this doubles the duration of the spell, and requires a spell slot 1 level higher. This raises the spell level from 3 to 4, and raises the DC from 24 to 25. Now some races get bonuses to enchantment. Kitsune receive a +1 to all enchantment spells they cast. And if you take the adopted social trait, so can you. And that's now a DC 26. So most physical combat classes won't be able to make this save, like fighters and rogues. Barbarians will have a little more wiggle room, especially when they go into rage, but not a whole lot. And even rangers with substantial wisdom modifiers will only be able to break your spells with a lot of effort. Or luck. But let's say you're trying to hold an elf monk. With a base save of 7, +2 from race, +2 from clarity of mind, +5 from wisdom, and +1 from iron will, and the ability to reroll from improved iron will, well, I'm not gonna lie to you, he's got a better than 50-50 shot at breaking your spell per round. So you'll need to soften him up a little bit first. The spell Touch of Idiocy is one of your better options for this. Basically, it does 1d6 damage to all his mental stats. On an average roll of, say, 3, you'll be dropping his will save by 2. Then there's alchemic weapons, like the fun gassed wretch flask, which will impose another -2. So that's a little more doable. Now let's end with an enchantment specialist character build. First, take Kitsune as your race. This will give you Kitsune magic, that's a +1 to your enchantment spell DC. Put 10 of your ability points into charisma, this will give you a 16. Then with your racial charisma bonus, that'll raise it to 18, giving you a modifier of +4. Make sorcerer your favorite class, so you can add +1/4 of the total DC of the enchantment spell to the spell DC. Then you'll be wanting the Fey Bloodline for your sorcerer, naturally. Put your first 3 levels in Sorcerer, and everything else in Bard, which will give you access to some cool bardic performances, like Fascinate and Suggestion. Oh, and you may want to consider the Lotus Geisha Bard archetype. You're giving up a lot if you take this archetype, but in return you get Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus Enchantment as bonus feats, and you can do these nifty things called Entrapping Performances. This is basically when you focus your entire bardic performance on one dude, increasing the DC by 2. Some feats you may want to consider are Spell Penetration, for overcoming that nasty spell resistance. If you don't know, spell resistance is like AC but for magic. Another fun one is Spellsong. This allows you to hide a spell within your bardic performance. Now for the big question with this build. Do your considerable bonuses to enchantment apply to your bardic performances like Fascinate or Suggestion? Well, that's kind of a gray area. A bardic performance is an ability, not a spell. But that being said, it's a magical ability that falls under the school that you've specialized in, Enchantment Compulsion. And in the case of Suggestion, well, that is a spell. So I think you can make that argument to your DM. Oh, and by the way, this build will also work with a human. Just use the adopted social trait to get Kitsune magic, and the racial heritage feat to get access to the Kitsune Sorcerer Favored Class bonus. Thank you for watching D6 Damage. Come on back for more character builds, guides, and tabletop gaming strategies.